Hey everybody, welcome back to Will's Toy Room. Now today, we're going to be taking a look at a couple Nintendo games. I love Nintendo. They're so bad. Now, go over a couple, about 12 of my favorite Nintendo games. And then I'll talk about ones that I'm hoping to get in the future. So, I guess we'll just start off, no particular order. We'll take a look at Contra. Everyone likes Contra. It's one of those universally accepted Nintendo games, kind of like Mario or Tetris. Speaking of Tetris, we'll get to that in a second. But it's such an easy game to pick up and play. There's really nothing to Contra. Of course, I can't remember the names of the two guys from Contra, which they do have names. But it's the red guy, the blue guy. And you go along, you're fighting soldiers, you're fighting aliens, you're fighting things that look like face huggers, you're fighting robots, you're fighting those annoying jumpy guys from the next stage, where you have to lay on the floor to shoot through the door. Hey, it rhymes. I just like Contra. It's childhood classic and just a lot of fun to pick up and play. Next, now we're going to be stepping away from the more traditionally classic Nintendo titles that you might have played or you like to play. We got Family Feud. Now, I like Family Feud because it's just a lot of fun to get some friends together and play, well, let's be real, the outdated version of a lot of these video games based off of family game shows like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, stuff like that. And what's fun about this is you have to think, like for the categories, like when they polled 100 people as to what the most popular, whatever it is, you have to think the way people thought back in 1988. What did they think was the top 100 answers or whatever, the top whatever behind all the stuff on this show? So, that's why I like it. I just think it's a fun game to play if you got some friends over. It's kind of like playing Jackbox now and stuff like that. So that's why I got Family Feud on the list. A couple games not entirely related to it, but we'll see some coming up here. I like a lot of games based off of movies and TV shows. And it is kind of surprising just how many games they made based off of just those two properties. I mean, everyone knows about a lot of the movie tie-ins for Nintendo. Probably one of the more famous ones being Batman. And then you got Predator, you have the Addams Family, then specifically Fester's Quest for Nintendo, with part of the Addams Family. And then, of course, you got some horror titles. Which we have A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th for Nintendo. Now, the first R-rated based video game property, that crown would go to Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre for Atari. But no, it is really surreal thinking about, these were marketed to children. It isn't like NECA nowadays putting, warning 18 plus or 17 plus on it. No, this was, there was no rating system. The rating system didn't exist till 1993. That's long after these two games were put on the market for anybody to buy. I just like them because, I mean, they're both very notorious. They're notorious Nintendo games. And just ridiculous, both ridiculous in their own rights, you know, and they've become so famous that, you know, NECA put out both figures of these in their first video game appearance, with Freddy being in the yellow and the red, and of course Jason being in his famous purple tracksuit with the baby blue mask. And I mean, everyone remembers the famous, I'll put it right next to the game, the Freddy's coming trademark. Freddy trademark is coming. It's so corny, it's great. And I'm very happy to have both of these two pieces of video game history in my collection. But going back to movie and show-based games, I would really like Gilligan's Island for Nintendo, a show I grew up watching, and I would like to have that in my collection. As well as, I'd really like Last Action Hero. You know, you might be indifferent about that Arnold movie particularly, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice tongue-in-cheek, you know, Arnold taking a self-jab at his own movies. But speaking of Arnold, we got here Terminator for Nintendo. Really happy to get this one. I'm a very big Terminator fan. I think that's probably definitely one of my top 10 favorite science fiction franchises of all time. And a quick thing to note here is that this one has a rental sticker on the front and the back. See it there? See it there? For Hollywood Video. You know, same time as Blockbuster and any of those other video stores that you would find, you know, putting out stuff to rent and whatnot. And that's something that I really like. I think it adds to the history of the video game as well, and just harkens back to this, just a simpler time of going out with your family, Friday night. You can rent a game, you can rent a movie. It was just a good time. And some people like to take off the stickers, and I think that is a crime. No, you gotta leave the history intact. You just have to. So that's... And I also do have Terminator 2 for Nintendo. I'll put that in a separate special video with a few other special cartridges. I think you're going to like that video a lot. But yeah, there's Terminator for Nintendo. This aside. And now we'll go back to a couple ones not based off of movies. Now this is Dig Dug 2 for Nintendo. Now this was just a lot of fun. It's very reminiscent. It's a good sequel to the original arcade game of Dig Dug. Again, very simple to pick up and play. You know, it doesn't... If you don't have the instruction manual, like I don't, it's not rocket science. It's... You go on an island, the island falls into the ocean, you shoot your air hose at the creatures, you pump them up and they blow up. It's just fun. It's simple fun. Interestingly enough, which I do also have this one, they did put... They made a copy of Defender 2 for Nintendo. Just a couple random sequels that Nintendo decided to put out for old arcade games. So that's why I got Dig Dug 2 on my list of one of my favorite games. And now, a couple other not movie-based or show-based games. We have a pretty rare game. This is Uninvited for Nintendo. Probably one of the first examples of survival horror a video game as well. Well, I guess the first technically survival horror would be Haunted House for Atari as well. But just look at that artwork. That is fantastic right there. And I know mine's a little beat up and stuff, but that's really the only reason I was able to get this game in my collection, is just the seller wanted some ridiculous price, and I said, well, you got a little bit of damage here. And then he's like, okay, how about this much? And we were able to talk around, and I got it for a much better price than you see it going for now. And again, I don't really like to talk about the price of stuff because I think it's a little irrelevant. Whether I pay it or someone, it's not about the price. It's never about the price. Also, side note of going back to that Terminator game, you know, Nintendo also put out these nifty cases, and I think this color, well, blue, clear, I think they also did red and orange, which is just fantastic. I actually remember as a kid going into Blockbuster and seeing them still renting out N64 games, and they had special cases like this. Like, they made ones for N64 and Super Nintendo as well. Now, they're really good for helping protect your expensive games and stuff like that. So, and plus, I just thought the ghostliness of a haunted house game would fit really well with the blue case. And then in the clear case, a game that, again, take a look at that artwork right there. Just take a look at that. You got a dude, this robot dude who kind of looks like the Destroyer from Thor, shooting a green laser through a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now that is just cool right there. That's ridiculous. Like, just going back, the artwork was just so inspired back in the day. I guess some people in the community refer to them as artridges. And I'm still glad, like, people still care about this kind of stuff, because, I mean, it hasn't gone anywhere. You know, games still have art on the boxes and stuff like that. But there's just something special about just this 1980s, it's hard to explain. It's very hard to explain, but if you know, you know. And that's, I didn't even mention the title of the game, which is Dino Wars. Dino Wars with a Z right there. That's a cool title right there. That's just, everything about this cartridge is just cool. And this one isn't the most expensive game, I don't believe, but it's in my top, you know, I got 12 right here, but it has to be protected. I must protect this one at all costs. Now we got a couple more, and we'll talk a little bit more about some other games I'd like to have. I'd really like the other two RoboCop games for Nintendo. And I know the further you get with RoboCop 2, and then RoboCop 3 is the most pricey one to get. But I'm hoping, and I know I can get them online, but I just like to find them in the wild. And that's something I failed to mention before, is that a lot of these games I did find in the wild for a really nice price. And it just makes you feel better, you know? It makes you feel proud, you know? Like, you can say you got this for less than whatever. Even if it doesn't seem like much to someone else, it's what matters to you as the collector that found that really good thing for a song. And that's another thing of what collecting is all about. Just the thrill of the hunt, the joy of finding that trophy, that elusive white whale of an item, and bringing it home, putting it on your shelf and saying, there, I got that now. Which is actually somewhat true of this one. which is Die Hard for Nintendo. I love Die Hard. And when I found out that they made a video game based off of it, of course, like anyone who knows about Nintendo knows about the Angry Video Game Nerd. And this was back when he was the Angry Nintendo Nerd. He did a review of Die Hard. And I thought it was funny. I thought a lot of his stuff was funny. But it's what helped me get into video game collecting. And a few years ago, I decided to bite the bullet and pay an online price for Die Hard, which, believe it or not, is like half of what it's going for now. And there was a little mishap with getting it shipped to me. This ended up going to someone in Alaska, and I ended up getting their package here. And I messaged the seller. I'm like, this isn't what I ordered. And the guy was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll tell you what. I'll take $50 off the price for your inconvenience. I'll refund you $50. And that made me happy. Made me very happy. So I ended up getting this for even less. And I proudly keep it displayed. I had it displayed for a little bit with my NECA John McClane figure from back in the day. I had a little Die Hard diorama set up. And again, just really happy to have this in my collection. Also, it seems like this one has some stickers on it from this place called Video 2. And a phone number, and I'm fairly certain this place is no longer in service anymore, like all video rental places, defunct and gone. Rest in peace, you know. And it is not soccer. Well, it could be soccer, but it's not soccer. Alright, we got one more not based off of any sort of movie or show. We got Tetris. Again, the simplicity of it, it's so easy to play. You just pop it in and you go. It's probably my #1 favorite Game Boy game of all time too. And there's no really bad version of Tetris. They're all really solid in my opinion. From Game Boy to Nintendo to even, you know, Tetris 99. And excuse me, I forget the name of the newest Tetris. But I have played that, and that is a lot of fun too. But just, it's a game that you don't have to think super hard about. You come home from a long day and you just pop it in and you just play. And that's why I got Tetris in the list of my top favorite Nintendo games. And I did mention before how I wanted the sequels to RoboCop for Nintendo, because of course I have RoboCop in my collection, which I do want 1 and 2, and I also have Back to the Future in my collection as well. So of course I want Back to the Future 2 and 3. Now, another infamous game. Of course, everyone knows the rainbow right there, that rainbow of death. It is a very they made a lot of confusing choices in this game. But I am a huge Back to the Future fan, so of course I have to have this in my collection. And I have played it, and it is frustrating, but it's another one of those pieces of video game history that you just have to have. If you're a Back to the Future fan, even if you just want to get the cart, you know, you gotta have this in your collection. Same goes for RoboCop. There is nothing probably more 80s than both of these right here. Especially RoboCop. It's a cybernetic police officer, you know, shooting drug lords and just, you know, Dead or alive, you're coming with me. Your move, creep. It's just so good. Another one of my definitely top 10 favorite sci-fi franchises of all time, RoboCop. And of course, you could also classify it Back to the Future as science fiction of the time travel aspect. I love both these franchises so much, along with Terminator and stuff like that. They're just so cool, and I'm so happy to have not only these games, but complete ones as well. You might see this plastic flopping around because that, I believe, is the original shrink wrap that came on the game, like as if someone bought these, opened this up, played the game, and then just put everything back in. Just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Last ones for games I'd like to have, speaking of LJN, I'd like to have Beetlejuice for Nintendo. Love Beetlejuice. The game, could take it or leave it, but I do want to take it. I want to find that game. Dick Tracy as well. I'd like to have that one as well. I'm going to say as well again, just to triple down on that one. For unlicensed, I'd really like to have Kid Icarus. That's another one that people really like. It is usually on a few people's top 10 favorite Nintendo games, along with, Metal Gear and Metroid and Mario. Yeah, the 3 M's right there. Kid Icarus is right up there, and I'd love to own Kid Icarus. So let's see. I can at least grab my complete ones. Here's a shot of all my complete Nintendo games. Yeah, right there. And then we'll get a shot of the ones in their rental cartridges right there. Take the sleeve off of these ones, and then get the ones that are just the carts. There we go. And as a bonus, Indiana Jones. I do have, I believe, Last Crusade. No, I have Temple of Doom for Nintendo. I have the very rare and sought-after Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine for N64, and I have Raiders of the Lost Ark for Atari. But what I'd really like is Indiana Jones's Greatest Adventures for Super Nintendo. I think that would be fantastic to add. They'll pop it in the Super Nintendo here. Also, I just kind of put on Scooby-Doo, so there'd be something interesting for you to look at besides just me and these little hunks of gray plastic as well. Well, that was my, I guess, top 12 favorite Nintendo games, as well as a few Nintendo games I would like to add to the collection. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and have a good day. I'll see you next time.